are back for Creature Commandos. We're going to be breaking down this show, giving you details, insights, comic book references, really doing the same thing we do with every show breakdown, all opinions based. So I want to hear you guys talking in the comments. But I have been so excited for this show to come out because my boy Coy is working with DC on the DC Showcase podcast. So this being the very first show that James Gunn is releasing, it's a big deal. This is super exciting on so many levels, even starting off from the logo that busts out. I'm so excited to just talk about this show and all of the episodes to come. But without further ado, let's dive into Creature Commandos. So just talking about the logo that starts, you've got Superman ripping out of chains into the DC Bullet, and it's so exciting to see this. I guess the first time that this was debuted, I believe, was at Comic-Con, and then the first time it came out in a show was the Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. That was the first time that they debuted this, but this is my first time seeing this Superman logo, and I love it because it's from the Flesher, if I'm saying that correctly, the Flesher comic book series was the first time that Superman was ever animated. And they used that image and that reference, and going into the DC Bullet, that became the logo. And I think they had that logo in the comics or even in the animated shows for a little bit, and then it was taken away. And now that it's back, these are two significant parts of DC that are coming together in this new show, in this new James Gunn legacy. And I think that's such a beautiful tribute, not only to the past DC, but also to the future of DC, as a reminder that we aren't going to forget where we came from in this new journey that James Gunn is taking. He's paying homage to the past DC, and that's what a beautiful first step into what is going to be the James Gunn DC universe. I think that that's such a beautiful take. It was just a nice thing. And I wrote so many, I was like, taking notes, I was jotting out, because I was like, the show hasn't even started yet, and here we are already setting the legacy strong. It's brilliant, it's beautiful. I think starting off with the magic of Themyscira, we're already seeing so many different players already. We've seen Superman, now we've got hints of Wonder Woman, Themyscira, the sons of Themyscira, the humans. These are wonderful pieces that have been pulled straight from the comics. And I think that it's so lovely that we're starting with Cersei, someone who's so anti-Wonder Woman, who's so anti-Justice League. And that's our first villain. Honestly, I think Illyana is going to actually be the villain. She's thrown off too many deadly sins already. The lust is so hard, the gluttony, all of it. I think that she is the real bad guy of this, or maybe she's working with Cersei, or Cersei is working for her. I do think Illyana is the big bad of this show. You heard it from me first. She is the big bad. I lock in my answer. That is what it is. But for now, the show is leading us to believe that Cersei is the big bad, that she is the rightful heir of Themyscira. Clearly, we may be seeing Wonder Woman in the show. If Themyscira is kind of the battleground by which we are trying to conquer, I do believe that we are going to start seeing Wonder Woman. But I love that it's very clear that this is taking place after the events of all the live actions, of Peacemaker specifically, Rick Flag Sr., and you've got Amanda Waller. And I love that they're making references not only to the Rick Flag, R.I.P., but also they're making references to Leota, the daughter of Amanda Waller, and the fact that Amanda Waller was outed by her daughter in Peacemaker. So we're still paying tribute to the live actions. And not to say that you need to watch all of the live actions, the Peacemaker, Suicide Squad, not that you need to necessarily have watched all of those shows to appreciate this, but to get a deeper understanding of the context of some of the things that they're saying, you might want it. Again, they explained themselves. I think Rick Flag immediately was like, oh yeah, when she outed you and now we can't use humans, so Suicide Squad is done. It's explained well enough to where you don't need the context. But if you want the context, especially when they're talking about the death of Rick Flag, that's a little more nuanced. And for those of you that know, I think I could talk about this because it's not like I'm spoiling the show that just came out, but Peacemaker was the reason he murdered Rick Flag in order to keep his secrets. Because it's, Peacemaker is one of those heroes where the name isn't necessarily what he is, if you catch my drift. He's not really a peacemaker. It's I'm going to do peace however possible. And if you stand in the way of my peace, I'm going to take you out. I think his slogan is like, I protect men and women, except those that get in my way, you will be, murdered instantly. He's mental. What are you gonna do? It's Peacemaker. But again, all that to say, I don't think you necessarily need to watch that in order to appreciate that. But I love seeing all of the different characters interacting. I'm gonna say something real stupid, and I know that I know this, but I don't know why every single time I see them together, I'm like, oh my God, Sean Gunn and James Gunn are brothers? Like, and I know that I know this, but it bothers me every time that I'm like, wait, are they? Yes, you know this already. But I love seeing that Sean Gunn is playing both Weasel and GI, and I love that interaction just as like a voice actor and as an actor in general. I love playing off of myself. And so for him, I feel like I want to see those tapes, because I'm sure that that's not the first line reading or interaction that they have, but just he like Weasel peeing in the car, GI just a few steps over, just staring and having that dialogue back and forth. Like, I want to be in that vocal room while Sean Gunn is recording both Weasel and GI. Like, I think that GI robot, I think that would be so fun. But I love how diverse and fun this group is. It's weird for me. I feel like Lady Frankenstein, the bride, is British. Is that, am I throwing, because I thought at first she would be Russian, but she sounds real British, which is confusing to me, because I thought that Frankenstein's castle, isn't that like more Russian or like Romanian over there? But she got a British accent. I'm confused on where they pulled up her body pieces. You know, that's one thing that, like, it's such a small, unnecessary detail for me to be complaining about. She's a corpse. She can have whatever dialect she wants. But it just was one of those things where I was like, that's weird. That's peculiar. I also think that it's interesting that they're starting to play with almost romantic feelings from Nina Mazursky to GI Robot, the Nazi-killing robot. And I understand that he has a lot of human traits in him, but that's a robot. And it's just interesting how they're playing with her psyche and her mentality, because even in episode 2, Lady Frankenstein is like, you're not a monster. You are just a human who has gills. Like, you're not like us. You're not the same. Like, you are still human. Whereas we are always going to be monsters. We are never not going to be monsters anymore. You're just a girl with gills. It's not the same. And that's a bummer. Like, that's such a bummer that even within her own monstrous race, she's not seen as enough. She's not seen as enough of a monster. It's honestly, I was feeling Nina, because like, and this is such a personal thing, and I know that it's only important to people who have these same experiences, but as a half-breed kid, as a Half-Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican, half Black, that's the same. I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not enough for the Puerto Ricans. I'm not dark-skinned. I'm too light-skinned to really be Black, and so I'm not accepted, you know, as on the Black side, because people don't know what I am. And I felt that. I felt that Nina was too monstrous for the humans, but not monstrous enough for the monsters. So I resonate with that a little bit. And so I can see why maybe she's finding an attachment towards this robot who is neither. He's neither monster. He's definitely not human. He just is, you know, and he's cognizant enough. He's got enough, you know, he's enough of a symbiote human-esque thing that he can have communications. And so if that's the only kind of human interaction that she can have, or the only familiar bond, then fine. I give it to her. That's fine. It's just the romantic bit of it that I was like, what is this? What is happening, Nina? Come on now, Nina. Like, wake up, smell the battery oil. You know, but I digress. I'm interested to see where that goes. I'm hoping it stays friendly. But speaking of unfriendly relationships, let's talk about the big change in episode 2 with the Frankensteins. I am so interested. I really thought that they were going to stick to the comic books, in that the reason why they're separated is the child. Like, I thought that was going to be the big thing, but knowing that they changed the entire backstory, I want to specifically talk about when Nina Mazursky and Lady Frankenstein were walking through Frankenstein's castle, and Nina points up at the family, and there's like 3 kids. I don't think, unless that one of them was the wife. I think that's what it was. One was the wife, and because it was 3 girls and him. So clearly one was the wife, but there is a book series, Frankenstein's Daughters, that talks about his twin girls. So I think that's the correlation. But I loved going back. I loved that Nina Mazursky was like, oh, is this his family? Did they live here? And she's like, no, this is just where he worked. Like, they lived down the hill. So I'm thinking especially seeing what's down the hill, I'm seeing this hovel of a home where his family lives, and meanwhile he's got this entire castle, but his family is not allowed to live there. What are you doing, Frankenstein? knew you were a cheater before you were a cheater. You're gonna have an entire castle, but your family's gonna live down the hill in a hovel. Rude. Bad guy. Do not think Frankenstein is a good guy. And if you do, red flags. I'm waving them. I'm waving all the red flags. But to change it from they were in love and they wanted their own child, which was the version that was in the comic books, in Frankenstein, the Seven Soldiers, in those comic books, Frankenstein and Lady Frankenstein, they wanted a son together. And that's, in trying to go back to Dr. Frankenstein, we want a kid. The kid turns out to be an obstruction and just like a blob of a monster, just like bad monster, like just deformed, malformed, aggressive, just bad. Frankenstein ends up killing him, and then later on we find out that Frankenstein wasn't actually, the Frankenstein's monster wasn't actually dead. The task force Shade took it, put it in the zoo, and years later we find out that their child isn't actually dead, and so they go on a mission, go find the kid. He's still, though older and bigger, is still a malformed, aggressive monster begging to be killed. It's Lady Frankenstein this time that puts it out of its misery. She forgives Frankenstein because that was what their animosity was. She was upset that Frankenstein killed their son because it was a baby. And just like that moment in Creature Commandos where Dr. Frankenstein is like, she was just born. She knows nothing beyond fear and confusion, and we need to give her time to adapt. And Frankenstein didn't understand that. He was like, because he is mostly aggression, less understanding. Even in Creature Commandos with Lady Frankenstein, he was like, no, I love her. I want her. Give her to me now. Give her. She's mine. That same behavior is what he distributed, that same behavior is how he acted in the comic books to their son. He didn't think. He just shot him dead. And Lady Frankenstein, knowing that, being the more emotional monster, could not handle the fact that her husband just killed their son without giving him time to adapt to the world. So they were estranged. So it's interesting now that in this, again, Lady Frankenstein, she was given time to adapt. And it's curious because I would assume that Eric Frankenstein had that same amount of time to gain knowledge, to grow, to become human adjacent. But the different paths that they took, and her sleeping with Victor Frankenstein. What? That switch. So no baby at all. Now it's just that she is the mistress of Victor Frankenstein. They fell in love. He created, which is weird because even that's like, is that Stockholm or is that like grooming? Is that Stockholm or grooming? I guess it's more grooming. He like groomed his mistress. HBO Max, man, let them do what they want to do. I digress. I just think that this is a really interesting show. I will say overall for the show, especially given that I was super excited and had been waiting for so long to see this, it was okay. It's not a bad show. I don't know what I was expecting. I think that like the meminess of it, like they even did the like, oh, and like the fact that all of the references are dated. I know it's like a older place, but even though all the references were dated, I felt like that chiseled a little bit away from me. It just, I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know if I was, because obviously Creature Commandos, it is a silly show. It's monsters. You got to suspend your disbelief just a little bit. I think I just was expecting something a little less silly, but it's James Gunn, and that's what he does. He writes really well, but he writes satire. He writes comical. He writes silly. He writes your superheroes being in the real world, and real people are goofy. They make mistakes. They're dorks. They're awkward. And those are the characters that he's writing with these. They're deeply complex characters. They're just a little bit more human. And I think I guess I wasn't prepared for human monsters making mistakes. I don't know what I was prepared for, but I do want to change my expectations because whatever expectations I had for the show hindered me enjoying what I watched. But I also come into these shows with a lot of comic book research, and I do it every time. I do it every time where I do a deep dive on comic knowledge, only to have it completely changed, and that's on me. But I digress. What was your favorite part in Creature Commandos? Let me know in the comments below. What are you excited for the next few episodes? The show goes until January. We're getting an episode every Thursday, Creature Commandos. I want to know who you're excited to see. I personally am excited to see, once again, after seeing Lady Frankenstein and Frankenstein throughout all of these years, I'm excited to see them finally coming together in this new age, especially when she's got her whole Creature Commandos Task Force M behind her. Very excited for that, and I'm excited to see, honestly, the women of this show have my whole heart. So I'm excited to see more of Nina Matsurtsky and where her journey goes, and if we ever get to see her laboratory with her, I think, father. So yeah, I'm excited for the women of this show. I digress. Let me know your comments below. I will see you guys for the next video. This was episode 1 and 2 of Creature Commandos, so I will see you for episode 3. Bye, friends.